Forget to like and subscribe. It's Jim Keller, everybody.
Good morning, good evening, good night, everyone. I will start this Poutine by saying, if you have a question for Intel, do let us know in the chat. We're keeping a list because I'm trying to wangle some sort of interaction with the C-suite over there. So good to understand what you guys are thinking about, what you want to know about. Just bear in mind, if you ask something about a future product, they probably won't answer it. If you ask a facetious question, they definitely won't answer it. So do keep that in mind. But welcome everyone to Tech Poutine. The George is busy this morning, so I'm going to run solo for a little bit until he gets in. But the reason I've essentially called this Poutine super last minute is that we had Intel's financials yesterday. Their Q2 2025 standard P&L, what have you, the sort of thing that I cover pretty much every quarter. However, for a while, I mean, we're almost 24 hours after the fact now, and I'm still taking calls. I'm still getting questions. Everybody is combing through the data because so much was said in their financial call that wasn't about their financials, which a lot of people are wondering about, or asking questions about, are trying to connect the dots to each other. And I've obviously got some opinions. I've done a couple of articles already. Lipbu, the CEO, shared a letter with employees that I posted on my Substack yesterday, and that did the rounds on Hacker News as well. Just that with a new CEO, as always, there's a lot of things to think about. New CEO obviously has to choose a direction. Lipbu, being very seasoned, seems to have chosen direction. It means there's going to be a good chunk of people losing their jobs and questions about the future of Intel and what the last 4 years of Pat Gelsinger has actually meant to the business. And there's a lot of positivity and a lot of negativity right now on social media, in my inbox about all this, on Discord, about everything that's going on. So I kind of want to carve out my little explanation of some of these things. And when George arrives, we'll get his opinion as well. I would have made this into a separate video, but I thought, because I'm also gathering in questions, wanting to get you guys on the chat, just understand what you lot are thinking about as well when it comes down to what Intel's doing and what their future looks like from your perspective. So I'll start the Poutine officially once I adjust everything into the right monitors. That way we can have a proper start. At some point we need to actually get these onto a podcast streaming service. I'll have to find time when I'm dead to do that. So hi everyone, and welcome to the Tech Poutine, the weekly-ish podcast from More Than More, where we usually talk about processors and silicon and how we teach special rocks to think in very special ways. We call the Tech Poutine because my name is Ian, and I run a channel called Tech Potato, and my co-host is George from Chips and Cheese. And if we had a guest, there'd be Gravy making a lovely poutine. Right now it's just me, so all you've got is potato, by far the superior vegetable. If we had a sponsor, this is where I might put it. But we don't, so it's just me, and you get to see some of the crazy. I actually don't have any merchandise on me to show you, but we'll skip over that. Shop.techpotato.com if you really want to support the channel. We do accept and read super chats made by our listeners and watchers on the air, but only if they don't demonetize the channel. The show usually lasts a good couple of hours, sometimes more, but stick around and we'll get to your Q&A. And I technically have a hard stop in a little over 2 hours. But if we get there, that's great. We've got so much Intel to talk about. And welcome to everybody joining in the chat. Davina, Teresa, Cybot, English, Surgeon, message over on Twitter. We'll get to Germany in a second. That's part of everything. Teresa says 14A was discussed in the HPC huddle a few minutes ago. Yeah, and it's I actually couldn't join that huddle, Teresa. I ended up having a very impromptu consultancy call, so I couldn't discuss with you guys and get your opinions. Yeah, would have loved to have been a fly on the wall on that, but paid work comes first. Sorry, I'm a bit of an arse like that. So let's go on to Intel. And I think the first thing to bring up is what we saw first. So the way it normally works with financials, for those of you who don't follow the ins and outs of every dollar that passes through these companies, is that once a quarter they show off their profit and loss list and give some details, sometimes more than others, and accompanies this is a call with some prepared remarks and then a Q&A with financial analysts. People like me listen in but don't actually ask any questions because we're not financial analysts. We just try and see what they're thinking about, so it informs us when we speak about the company. Thing is, an hour before that, Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan posted a letter to his employees, and I'm going to share that on the screen if I can get this to work. I'll dump this link into the chat. If you want to follow along, if you want to read ahead, and if you've got questions, do dump them down. But this is his letter to employees. It's fairly substantial. It's a good, I think, 1,400 words or so. But key points into this letter. The quarterly revenue was above guidance. So every quarter they say, here's the amount of money we expect to make next quarter, and here's how much of it is meant to be profit. They underpredicted last quarter, and this quarter was above guidance, and I believe it was also above Wall Street estimates. That's generally considered a good thing for the company to do that. Next key point is headcount reduction, and we'll get into this in a bit, but if you've been watching the news, Intel's been laying off a variety of people in different areas. We saw a good chunk of it last year during Pat Gelsinger, a lot of voluntary and involuntary redundancies to go down to 130K, I think it was at peak, down to around 100K that it is now. There are more on the line, and Lip-Bu is saying that they will reduce headcount by another 15% to go under 75,000. I've got a graph later, but that showcases that will be below TSMC in terms of employees, and I believe that's planned for by end of year. So that's a pretty substantial steep drop in headcount. But this is a 50% streamlining of management layers. If Intel's being criticized of anything, it's about being top heavy. Just lots of managers, and that's the effect of having a 50-year-old company, right? You have managers by managers, and you have business units and managers of business units and product managers. And the idea is that streamline it. So if you were to draw a line from the CEO to anyone else in the company, the amount of people you go through should be 50% less now. The counter argument is that means that each person that stays is going to be having twice as many direct reports. The only big company I've worked at had 750 people when I joined, 3,000 when I left, and the reporting system was atrocious. So don't think I've got much to say there. Return to office in September. So they're going back to 5 days a week in the office pretty much across all their sites. So they're taking out work from home. Lip-Bu is seeing this as this is the only way we're going to return to the company. Foundry to be customer responsive. I'll get into that in a second. And the projects in Germany and Poland halted. This is about build out. 18A is ramping. 14A has to meet requirements. We'll get into that. Simultaneous multi-threading to return to the roadmap. This is part of a bigger strategy where Lip-Bu is going to be signing off all the new designs personally. I'll add in this comment division, include employees that are part of Altera also removed to reach this count. Yeah, well, part of this is the Altera division, the FPGA division is expected to close, the acquisition is expected to close this quarter. And I believe they employ around 4,000 to 5,000 people. So they may be at 100,000 now. That includes Altera. And so realistically, it's 96, and then a few more, then 15%. So there is that. And then the refocus of the AI strategy, the whole thing of will Intel get into AI. We got some clarity, though, if the title of the live stream has given it away. With more answers comes more questions. So, and to answer Davina here, is Altera closing or being spun off? Last or 2 quarters ago, they announced, or last quarter, they announced that a equity partner called Silver Lake is buying 51% of the company. So it's essentially being spun out. Intel will still have 49% of the company, but it will not be a controlling stake. So they will operate fully independently. It will not be Altera by Intel. It will just simply be Altera. So that will be, seems to be happening in Q3. But we just saw Synopsys and Ansys take more than 18 months to close. So if Altera closes in the next 3 months, that'll be pretty quick. Government usually works a bit slower than that, but we'll see. They say this quarter. So I won't read this all verbatim because I think you guys can just watch it, read it with the link I posted. But this afternoon reported the results above the high end of guidance, reflecting solid demand and execution across the business. Last few months have not been easy. I think Lip-Bu's been in charge about 5 months now. We're making hard but necessary decisions to streamline the organization, drive greater efficiency and accountability. Critical to strengthening our competitive positioning, but it means we are saying goodbye to valued colleagues. To everyone who will be leaving Intel, thank you sincerely for your contributions. Here's some money. Good luck. So we are implementing a plan to reduce our headcount by about 15%, and we plan to end the year with a global workforce of 75,000. So yes, it is a year-end number. As a result of workforce reductions and attrition. Interesting choice of word there. We completed a significant amount of our workforce reductions in Q2. So even though we've just had the Q2 numbers, I think they only went down by 1,000 or a couple of thousand people. I'll get the graph out and show it in a bit. And streamlining the management by 50%. On track to implement return to office in September, with sites completing necessary improvements to operate at full capacity. So whenever we went from work from home, offices kind of shrank and consolidated, just generally everywhere else in the world. And the point is they're saying we don't need to hot desk when people come back. So all of this is designed to drive organizational effectiveness and transform the culture. We'll become a faster, more agile, more vibrant, eliminate bureaucracy, empower engineers to innovate with greater speed and focus. We'll reduce our costs to enable investments in future growth. These are the building blocks of a new Intel. So strategic pillars of growth. A lot of people have highlighted that this is a bit of a wanky phrasing, but I don't think there's realistically any other way to say, here's what we're doing to grow. One, Foundry, right? Foundry, the big potential cash cow at Intel, in reality is what? 20% of revenue, less than right now, but it's where most of the money is ending up. So we will take a fundamentally different approach. He kind of says in this, or he says in the financial call that, to paraphrase, Pat Gelsinger had it wrong. And that was quite a blunt way of phrasing this. Over the past several years, the company invested too much too soon without demand. In the process, our factory footprint became needlessly fragmented and underutilized. Pat's whole argument was we need empty shells because at some point when demand picks up, like after a recession, we're going to get massive volume, and if we have the shells, that's half the work done. Lip-Bu is basically saying we've overextended and we're building too many shells. And as a result, we don't have a unified system, so it's inefficient, but also we end up with locations underutilized, and in the Foundry business, that's a death knell. These fabs cost thousands of dollars to run per second. And so any utilization, I think a leading edge fab quote is usually somewhere around 85% utilization in order to be profitable. So there was reports earlier that some of Intel's fabs were at 70%. So that's underutilization. Going forward, we will follow a systematic approach to growing our Foundry footprint that's fully aligned with the needs of our customers. As in, we will be a fast follower of our customers. We will be judicious and disciplined as we allocate capital, because that's what great foundries do. With that in mind, we've decided not to move forward with previously planned projects in Germany and Poland. So Germany was the European leading edge fab that was due in 27, I want to say, in Magdeburg. This was part of the Silicon Corridor and developing an ecosystem in Germany. I believe it got to the point where they bought all the permits. They were getting some money from local and EU government to help with the building. They may have even broken ground already and started building. But what they're saying is, nope, that's being binned. Our decision to build in Germany, to have a second fab in the EU after Ireland, no. Poland, I believe, was a R&D center. Again, I think Pat had earmarked a couple of $1 billion to build out Poland. Yeah. Moe says he thinks they got about 10 to 12 billion from the German government. Now the question is, it's in the details, right? A lot of that money was tax breaks, not cash. So it's that sort of thing. If they don't build, then they're not actually getting the tax break. You've got to think here, sunk cost fallacy, right? Is it worth throwing good money after bad? Because in Litboo's mind, it's a bad investment. So don't keep throwing money in the hopes that someday it will be good. For him, that's what these consider. So we also plan to consolidate our assembly and test operations in Costa Rica to our larger sites in Vietnam and Malaysia. So it's actually AMD that has the diffused in Costa Rica stuff on some of their silicon. So this is just some of their assembly and test. I have visited the Malaysia assembly and test facility. It's massive. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's really impressive. You get to see PCBs that are like 48 layers thick and stuff for some of their testing, and it's all custom. And the problem with the future is that instead of testing chips, you're now testing separate chiplet dies, silicon chiplets. And testing a chiplet that may not have the power delivery on board gets more complex, and there's that whole thing. So the complexity of assembly and test is going up, and the idea is saying, well, we're going to focus it on the areas where we do the most of our assembly and test. Costa Rica remains a large and important Intel site, so that's home to key engineering teams and corporate functions. So still we'll have R&D and corporate. It may even be the sales office in the region. But yeah, assembly and test is going. We remain deeply committed to investing in the US, where we will apply the same level of financial discipline. To that end, we are further slowing construction of Ohio. So they'd already announced that they were going to push out the Ohio completion a couple of years. It sounds like they're going a bit more. They aren't saying how much. But it does look like that's more of a 28, 29. So for everybody thinking about 14A, this is where potential. While maintaining flexibility to accelerate based on new customer wins. Essentially saying, we can slow down Ohio, but we can speed it up if necessary. We're also sharpening the focus on financial discipline of our technology development. Job number 1 is ramping 18A. In the last Poutine, or a few, I think we covered the Reuters article, talking about 18 and 18AP. Litboo says 18A and 18AP are critical nodes for Intel products and will drive meaningful wafer volumes well into the next decade. So when Pat said he's betting the company on 18A, in the same way that TSMC 7 nanometer is what now, 6 years old? The whole point here is that 18A, when it comes online at the end of this year, or the initial products come out, and then it ramps through 26, is that it will still be running in 30 and 31 and 32 and 33, just like TSMC 7, just like TSMC 16, just like a bunch of those. So yeah, with the first product being Panther Lake this year. As we ramp our own products in high volume and deliver for important Intel 18A customers like the US government, because the government's throwing them a few billion to build an 18A, the whole point being to allow companies that are in leading edge to evaluate 18A for other, essentially basically saying, here, have a few $100 million, go see if you can build something on 18A. And if you like it, we highly recommend you buy more 18A. So there's that. That's part of the customer acquisition strategy. We'll get into more detail on 18A as we go through some of the other stuff. So looking further ahead, we're developing 14A as a foundry node from the ground up in close partnership with large external customers, plural. This is essential to designing a process that meets specific customer requirements and enables a broader segment of the market. Going forward, our investment in Intel 14A will be based on confirmed customer commitments. There are no blank checks. He doesn't actually say it in here, but he said it in the prepared remarks. They don't subscribe to the "if you build it, they will come" philosophy. They don't subscribe to Wayne's World, basically. Litboo is not Wayne or Garth. Comments below about which Wayne's World character you think Litboo is. But essentially here, this is a precursor to essentially saying, if there's no 14A demand, we're not going to build it. And if you go into the documents, this could easily be extrapolated. This could easily be extrapolated to Intel saying, we're no longer doing leading edge node development. That's how I interpreted this at this point. A lot of people are coming to the realization that if Intel doesn't get external customers on 14A, 14A just won't exist. Basically, there has to be more than product. We'll get into some of the more details because, again, this is more of a sort of like a brief overview. So here we get into x86. Revitalize the x86 segments. Core client and server segments. Client being the biggest part of Intel right now. To that end, in client, Panther Lake is top priority. So first SKU by end of year, rest of SKUs at the first half of next year. Drive continued progress on Nova Lake, which is the second half of 26 platform, to close gaps in the high-end desktop space. So if you want a high-end desktop processor from Intel, you're going to have to wait at least 12 to 15 months. So there's that. In data center, we are focused on regaining share as we ramp Granite Rapids while also improving our capabilities for hyperscale workloads. This is hyperscale, not AI, so we're talking instances here. To support this, we are reintroducing simultaneous multi-threading, or what Intel calls hyperthreading, back into the roadmap. Moving away from it put us at a competitive disadvantage. Bringing it back will help us close performance gaps. We are also making good progress in our search for a new leader of our data center business. So there's a lot to unpack here about simultaneous multi-threading. Simultaneous, I'll just call it hyperthreading because hyperthreading is Intel's word for it. Intel split between P cores and E cores a while back. Performance cores and efficiency cores, or as some people call them, economy cores. The E cores didn't support hyperthreading because that was their workload profile. When you build a core, you have to build it with however many SMT threads you're going to run, because that aligns how you size caches, how you size buffers, all that jazz, all that part of design. You need to know what your end goal is before you start designing it. So if you take out hyperthreading, like with E-cores or with the cores inside Lunar Lake, which are going to be in enterprise. What LitBoo's saying here is new cores will have to have simultaneous multi-threading. And it's unclear whether that means all of Diamond Rapids, which is after Granite Rapids, will have SMT now, will have hyperthreading now, or whether they mean it's the generation beyond, which we'll get into a bit because LitBoo accidentally revealed the code name in the analyst call. So there's that. SMT, they're talking about it purely in terms of in data center. So consumer, that may just be a filter down the effect of one core, two solutions sort of thing. So across client and center, I've directed our teams to define next generation product families with clean and simple architectures. Why have architectures got more complex? Because we need extreme performance. There is no such thing as a simple architecture. That's called a microcontroller anyway. I'll leave that rant for a different day. Better cost structures, that's perfectly fine. Build it complex, build it fast, but let's see if we can do it by building cheap. This means not sending wafers to the fabs just to see if something works. We actually have, it's what Intel called a hot shot. So a hot shot is just something that whizzes through the factory as fast as it can. Problem being, hot shots cost upwards of $100,000, even $250,000 a wafer, because they disturb everything else in the pipe. Fewer hot shots enables a better cost structure for development. Now, I'll be honest, Pat Gelsinger was doing that already, right? Better cost structure for chip development, for wafer deployment. That was already part of Pat's plan, so nothing changes there. Also, simplified SKU stacks. Anybody remember how many chips were in Haswell? I have them here. I did have them. Yep. No. Or was it Skylake? Each one of these, if I can get my mouse on the right thing, each one of these is a unique SKU of one family. This is back when Intel was doing every 100 megahertz is a different SKU. So the point is, let's simplify that. They kind of already did with P&E in a data center, kind of already done that with client as well. The point here is, I think P&E was a bit more complex than people were expecting. Excuse me. So are we going to have a unified server stack back again? We'll see. Or is E-cores the new client cores and P-cores are the new enterprise cores? Who knows? In addition, I have introduced a policy where every major chip design is reviewed and approved by me before tape out. People were wondering, because LitBoo is a guy who is an investor. He has electrical engineering degrees. He was the CEO of Cadence for 15 years and on the board for 19, if I remember correctly. He knows what chip design means and the tools needed to do it. The question is, can he accurately evaluate what a chip needs to get, or what a chip needs full stop? The thing is, he says before tape out. So we're not talking architecture here, right? Architecture is already built. The thing is, before tape out means you've done all your simulation, you've done all your validation, you've done all your software checks. What he's saying is, I want to make sure that all those are done to my satisfaction before calling up the fab and saying, I want to invest 150 million in masks and tool time and wafers, whether it's his own fab or somebody else. He's not here validating the architecture of the chip. He's here wanting to personally just make sure that all the testing, all the validation, all the early software development, or the strategy for finalizing the chip, making sure the timing is signed off properly, making sure that the multi-physics simulations, making sure that even if the chip's taped out, do we have a cooling strategy for when we deploy it? That's not something you need to be deep in the architecture weeds for. That's something you need to know about. Are all the steps that we do on EDA done to my ability? And if there's one thing Litboo knows, it's EDA. So I don't think this is a bad thing. People have criticized it for saying, well, this will just delay stuff because what if he's busy? He's the CEO. I've got a feeling all the projects under Intel, he has carved time out in his schedule to go examine, look at. So before tape out, he already knows everything, right? So it's not just he won't hear about a project until it's ready to tape out. He will be following it along. So yeah, he's not a chip designer, sure, but he knows EDA, and this is an EDA question, not a chip design question. AI strategy. So buzzword of the moment, AI. We will focus our efforts on developing a cohesive silicon system and software stack strategy. I would argue Intel already had that. The question was always deployment and performance. They have silicon, multiple types of silicon, effectively. They have systems. They have a software stack, which runs on most, right? In the past, we have approached AI with a traditional silicon and training-centric mindset. Yeah, everybody did. That's what everybody did. That's why Intel bought Habana, right? Training silicon. They mothballed the inference silicon because they said, as Jensen says, one architecture to do both. This needs to change, and we've already started incubating new capabilities while attracting new talent. He also said on the call that, hey, there are startups doing amazing things. Maybe we should look at them. Litboo's the chairman of some of those startups. Just putting it out there. As we make this shift, we will concentrate our efforts on areas we can disrupt and differentiate, like inference and agentic AI. A lot of people have criticized this statement as well, saying, well, now Intel's just putting itself in this box that's in the corner. The thing is, if you look at where revenue is going to be at the end of the decade, it's going to be 90% in inference and agentic and not so much in training. So going after the bigger piece of the pie isn't a problem. My issue here is concentrate on efforts where we can disrupt and differentiate. For those people who follow the channel religiously, and I know there's like my mum and my dad, maybe, you guys know that I follow so many AI chip startups, right? 90% of them are doing inference only. Half of those are data center inference. They're examining every unique architecture, every little angle, every little point that they can make on this. What's left to disrupt without inventing new? And inventing new is blue sky. Maybe this is what it means by incubating new capabilities. The only way that Intel's going to disrupt with a new product in inference is if they find something that's better than transformers, and they're the only people who have the IP. We get an x86 revolution, but in AI. There are lots of questions here. I'm not trying to, be overly positive or overly negative in either sense of the word. But there's already a lot going on. So our starting point will be emerging AI workloads. Then we will work backwards to design software, systems, and silicon and enable the best customer outcomes. Again, another problem there is the AI workloads are changing on a monthly basis. So is that exactly... If you were to create silicon from even Intel, even if you used every accelerant known to man, if you're using IP you've already built and you're just stitching it together and putting it in a chip and then validating it, that's a year. If you're using new IP that you're building from scratch, that's probably 2 years. And then on top of that, you've got to build a software stack and the system. By the time you're 2 years later, has the AI workload changed? I mean, this is what a lot of the startups are betting on, that things will stay the same for a while. And as we move to agentic, it may be a system solution, not an individual chip solution that's needed. So that enable the best customer outcomes. And a lot of those customers are building their own silicon too. There is a lot of issues there. We'll have a lot of work underway, and we'll be sharing more plans in the coming months. The future of Intel's is ours to build, so we have no time to waste. We'll continue acting with urgency, discipline, and focus. Q2 was a step. We will meet this moment by building a new Intel for a new era. So, by and large, that's his letter to employees. Now, there's a lot to go over on the financial side. Let's just cover a few extra things here before I get into some of the more detailed discussion. So Intel sold about 7% of its Mobileye stock for about $1 billion, just short of. They still own 84% of Mobileye. Take with that what you will. 18A production is starting in Arizona. He also announced that after Diamond Rapids will be called Coral Rapids. But that will be due, that's the 14A chip due in 28, 29. So there's that. Financials. Okay, so here's an interesting aside thing. So one of the things that came out is that they actually wrote down $800 million in equipment, in depreciation. Now, you may have heard me say on Poutine before that equipment in this industry doesn't really get destroyed. A lot of stuff is reused. It's reused elsewhere, or it's sold and reused. What Intel said here, what CFO Dave Zisner said, is that part of their build-outs, I'm not sure whether this is Ohio or Germany or Arizona or whatever, they had pre-purchased equipment from equipment vendors, but then realized it was sitting in the warehouse for too long. So they decided to go to their fabs that they've already got up and running and replace old equipment with this new equipment. So they were able to replace not like for like, but with the upgraded version, basically. So instead of doing so many wafers per hour, this one could do so many plus 20%, whatever. And the old equipment that got taken out of the fab, it was more financially beneficial to write it off than to sell it, which is interesting. But what this basically means is that they wrote off 800 million. It's stuff they've already paid for, so it's already been in a previous thing. But they've upgraded one of their fabs or some of their fabs somewhere. Yeah, so Intel clarifies it was due to overbuying tools for new fabs and using to replace older tools in existing fabs, and the old equipment having more value as write-down than as resale. I get an email once a week from a global Foundry's hardware reseller, and that person seems to have 100 tools a week to sell. I don't check whether it's the same tools every week or their new tools. But, as I say, 90% of all fab tools that have ever been created are still in the ecosystem somewhere. Now, they may be in the piddly fab that's still doing 450 nanometer or 1 micron, and they only do 2 wafers a month, but it's still there. Intel still roughly lost some money in non-GAAP. Margins were significantly down, but that's because of the write-downs. Quarterly revenue, so this is the latest one, 7.9 billion in CCG, so it went up slightly. DCAI down slightly, Foundry down slightly, and other up slightly. So quarter on quarter slightly down, but year on year slightly up. They did say they had a slightly unseasonal Q1. Q1's usually down because of client. I believe they said last quarter it was actually higher than expected. So that being said, they said they didn't sell as many Lunar Lakes in Q2 as they expected. So yeah, so Foundry is this graph again, 18A. We'll get to some of the more interesting things in a second. The company's Intel 7 process node remains capacity constrained, so they don't have enough capacity for Intel 7, which sounds weird to a lot of people, right? Intel 7, that's the old stuff. How are they capacity constrained? You mean they... So this is, don't forget, this is Intel 7, which some people want to call their 10 plus 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 or whatever. So some analysts asked if the lack of having enough 7 was driving volume on Intel 4 and 3. And they said the answer is no. Raptor Lake on Intel 7, as a monolithic chip, is preferred to Meteor Lake on Intel 3, because the advanced packaging on Intel 3 is more expensive to run. On the flip side, when Intel ramps up 18A, they'll have the double benefit of pulling away from TSMC, but also the benefit of EUV. It will still be advanced package, which is a little bit annoying on the cost side. Don't forget, AMD's advanced packaging is only on the X3D chips, and they're the higher cost parts. When AMD was doing chiplets, it was all really basic 2D packaging. That's why, but it still was expensive just to do basic packaging. Intel's Foundry roadmap remains unchanged, even with the restructuring. So 18A with gate all around and backside power delivery will be in line. 18AP will be critical nodes for products. Beyond that lies 14A. Again, we'll get to that in a second. And here's the roadmap that they announced earlier in the year. So you've got AP, so the performance variant. At the same time, we've got Intel 12 coming online. That's the reuse of the older process node technology, but with UMC as a partner. We've got 14A, we've got 14AE with the Power Direct. And APT, this is the base tile for TSVs for some of the big chips. And then we get into Germany, Poland. With the current US administration, no rush to hand out CHIPS Act funding to pay for additional fabs. Even with the recent AI summit stating the US manufacturing needs to be shored up, the desire for the Ohio fabs has been cooled. So for those of you not following this too closely, there was like an AI summit in Washington this week. The US has launched a new AI action plan. And part of it is, returning USA to high performance, high volume, leading edge manufacturing to shorten it up. Lisa was there. Jensen was there. Lip-Bu was not. Intel was not there at the event talking about leading edge American manufacturing. So does this mean they're talking more about TSMC in Arizona or Samsung in Taylor near Austin in Texas? It's this weird dichotomy, right? The US is saying we want, the thing is also if the US wants, it's a longer conversation, but if US wants to build up to that level of being highly competitive on the leading edge, say Intel's quite happy with its 18A. It's got questions about whether it's going to do its 14, but if you want to keep on that cadence, there might be the need for a CHIPS Act 2 and a CHIPS Act 3. And if there's one administration that probably doesn't want to do that, it's this one. So again, it's catch-22. We want to help this industry, but we don't want to seem like socialists, but we don't want to seem like they're bailing them out. And they also need to stand on their own 2 feet. All the while, Taiwan and China and Japan and Korea are funneling hundreds of billions of tax breaks into their semiconductor industry. So there's a mixture of things going on. And I'm not American, so I don't necessarily have a say in the matter about any of this. But there's a deep discussion here about Intel and its 18A and its 14A processor, which we'll get to after we've gone through this document. So in the more immediate future, Intel is reducing its revenue expectations for its advanced packaging services. So if you remember last quarter, they said out of all of Foundry, it's the advanced packaging that's actually in the black making money. Turns out it's not making as much money as they thought it would. Intel does have some advanced packaging customers, namely itself. And I believe some of the Amazon packaging is done, but I'm not too sure if that's advanced packaging. But this is also, it's one of the factors Intel has to play with is the more volume they provide, or the more volume they sell of chips that Intel products sells, the better the economics are for Foundry. So if you have a competitive product, it helps Foundry along it. You know, again, the push-pull factor, right? So details here are slim, but this is in of itself an interesting development since the last several quarters. Yeah, there's been advanced packaging capacity has been a bottleneck for high-end GPUs. So it means that even with the demand for CoWoS, Intel's not able to shore up customers with its EMIB and Foveros. Overall, most of Intel's long-term guidance today has been focused on Foundry. So become a more disciplined Foundry is item number 1 on the pillars. We saw that. And yeah, it's just a very different direction to Gelsinger. DCAI actually went up in margin, even though it went down. Part of this was just cost of sales going down, driving efficiency. Intel's also ramped into Nvidia's AI boxes this generation. Again, Coral Rapids on the 2829 and on the AI part. Yeah, so throughout all of this, there has been no further mention of Gaudi. So through all the talks, nothing was said about Gaudi. Intel's AI silicon plans have undergone several changes over the years, most notably the cancellation of Falcon Shores. So for those of you following, it was Gaudi 1, Gaudi 2, Gaudi 3, Falcon Shores, Jaguar Shores. Falcon Shores was announced last quarter that it was going to be relegated to test chip, meaning we have Jaguar Shores in the 27-28 timeframe. And the longer term plan was to integrate into, Falcon or Jaguar, a mixture of Gaudi architecture, a mixture of Xe architecture, a mixture of CPUs, and a mixture of HBM. The only thing Lip-Bu mentioned was x86 and graphics. Did not mention Gaudi. So it feels like that Intel sees the future of its AI business in the graphics architecture, not the AI architecture it paid money for right now. I'm extrapolating a lot here based on what Lip-Bu said. A lot of some people have told me, Habana has shed people of late. However, the Habana team are very proud of what they've done. To the point where Gaudi 3 again was an architecture that was built pre-acquisition. So whatever they were designing for Gaudi 4, Gaudi 5 over the last 5 years in terms of architecture, where's that going? We don't know. We don't have any. And in terms of Xe graphics, I mean the discrete GPUs. Do I have my? No. So here's a Gaudi 1 card. I don't think I have my Arc card. So yeah, this is Arc. This is Battle Mage, Xe, Xe2, Xe3. So people who were thinking, people who are wondering, does the GPU architecture survive all these cuts? Yes. It's a lot more of a key pillar. Yeah, I can see Dom, my editor, in the background. He's got his A770, I think, because he's just upgraded to the B580. So yeah, it's that. Also, you could think of Intel's notebook is the Xe architecture, so it makes sense to put the Xe in the data center. Just like Nvidia has one architecture from end to end, pretty much the same architecture, just some of it's got some graphics things stuck onto it. So maybe this is what I mean just by simplifying the stack, right? They've got rid of the FPGA business, which was also part of the AI story. So if they can scale Xe up to the data center, they kind of have. They've got Flex GPUs, right? That's designed for virtualization and VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. So there's that. And as Sebri says, in terms of graphics, it's actually quite popular. They just launched the B50 and the B60 Pro, right? This card specifically built for AI development on desktop. They're coming. They're coming. It's IFA in a few weeks. There might be something announced there. Personally, I want the dual GPU one. That looks fun. Let's go. So client, this is the desktop and laptop. Made some money but lost some margin. Launched new AI PCs and continues to see demand. But I think they said here that the average selling price of chips went down. That's the major factor for the margin going down. But they sold more chips, hence the revenue is higher. Lunar Lake, I'm not saying they're admitting Lunar Lake is a mistake, but they're just saying the cost of the packaging, because it's Foveros, with the memory, which they're selling at cost, and it's still an expensive chip to make and to sell. So Lunar Lake is on the lower end of Intel's regular margins. And so does Intel want to sell more Lunar Lakes? Well, for share, that's a great result, but it's a costly chip and they might not sell as much. So another reason why Raptor Lake is seeing more pickup, than Lunar or Meteor. But otherwise, fairly silent quarter for client. Nova Lake, new desktop chip in end of 2026. In terms of other, we've got Altera, Mobileye, and IMS Nanofabrication. They saw a 20% bump in revenue year on year, and are in the black, though slightly lower than last quarter. Some of this will disappear as and when the Altera stake sale is expected to close in Q3. Outlook's higher than last quarter. Sorry for the fast scroll, but it's this graph here. So they're expecting revenue up, gross margin up, but if we compare it to a year ago, worse than a year ago. So this big bit here was during pandemic, of course. So after pandemic, that's where it's gone down here. Looks very different compared to an Nvidia graph. And towards the end here, again, sorry for the fast scroll. Oh, did I take out the employee graph? I thought I'd left that in here, or did I skip over it? Oh, here's the employee graph, yeah. So here's a list of employees. For context, no, Patriot, I'm going to cover that after this because I think it's a wrong. I think don't get me wrong, Dylan over at CRN's great. I think there may be something wrong here about Nex, but I did see it in my Twitter feed just before we started this. So in terms of employees, for context, most companies here provide employee numbers once a year to the nearest 100. Intel does it to the nearest 100 every quarter. Nvidia used to do it every quarter to the nearest 1. Now they do it every quarter to the nearest 100. So as some more of these show their financials this quarter, AMD might be due an update here. Apple might be due an update. But if we think Intel is going to be about here, actually I need to highlight, yeah, Intel's going to be about here by the end of the year. So 131,000 at the start of 2024, down to just more than half 2 years later. That's a hell of a headcount reduction. And yeah, that's kind of it for the main article. I spoke about the AI action plan here. Intel events on my radar. So Hot Chips is in late August in Stanford. If you're there, say hi. George will be there too. Intel has 2 presentations. Previous years they've had 6, but this year they have 2. One is about their E-core server product line, and the other one is about its next generation networking silicon. There's a third talk about building chips as an academic on Intel 16, I think, as well. But it's also worth noting that Intel postponed its 2024 event, Intel Innovation, saying it would delay a year. It's usually Intel's chance to align with customers, partners, and press. But at this time, Intel hasn't confirmed if the event is going ahead. But as we get closer to when we expect it to be, September, October, we might get more information. It would mark 6 months since Bhutan's arrival, if he was to announce it soon. But definitely, once the event occurs. And then this is where my article, for those of you who do follow on the Substack, this is my rare paywall element. For those of you wondering what's beneath the paywall, or you redeem your free paywall article, I've literally said it just includes the prepared remarks. These transcripts you can get elsewhere. You get them here because you pay, and I love you for it. So we just get the prepared remarks from Litboo, which I'll get into in a second. Core x86, AI, and then the analyst Q&A. This is literally just me trying to type 5,000 words an hour. I may have lost my tab again. This is annoying. Let's see if I can find it. Or did I move it into it? I probably moved it into a different window. I just hate it when you have 1,000 tabs open. So, yeah, I will remove that. I want to go back to what Patriot said. So NEX in previous quarters was called the Networking and Edge Group. So this is about this is everything from what Intel does in networking, because Intel used to have still does have a formidable networking business, but also everything to do with, edge silicon, which used to be part FPGA, part Xeon. Altera's out of the picture, so it's now part Xeon. Last quarter, or 2 quarters ago now, they announced that NEX would be coming off the balance sheet because they were dissolving Edge under client because of the power window. And they never really said anything about the networking side. Realistically, under DCAI. So effectively, NEX doesn't exist, right? As of like a few weeks ago, as of last quarter, when they announced this was going to happen. So the fact that CRN is reporting NEX spinoff really threw a red flag to me, because NEX doesn't exist. There's networking in one part of the business now and Edge in another part. They could still sell off networking. I think the Edge business is too tied to the Xeon roadmap. Networking, sure. A few of you may remember years ago, they bought Bigfoot Networks, and they had Tofino switch silicon that was meant to be at the forefront of optics as well. That was mothballed. I want to say under Bob. No, it must have been a Krasanich decision to mothball that division. And we all turned around and went, what? This is one of your leading vehicles for things like networking and optics. And they went, oh yeah, so this design is a programmable switch. It turns out people want programmable network cards, not programmable switches. And so our response is, well, why didn't you sell it? And the response we got was, Again, this is back when Intel was making money, right? Hand over fist. Barefoot Networks, there we go. And yeah, and it's always been a wonder of what exactly is going down. And so we saw multiple products from the networking division. There were basically two types of smart NIC, essentially. One, you had custom ASIC smart NIC. This is custom silicon just for being a smart NIC. Number 2 was you had the Xeon D plus FPGA solution. And they were given different names. I always forget which way rounds they are. But the years and years ago, they had a product called Mount Evans. We've discussed it on the Poutine before. This is the hot chips presentation schedule. And if I scroll up to the end of day 1, there's a networking session. What's the first discussion? The Intel Mount Morgan infrastructure processing unit, the IPU, the custom. It sounds like it's custom silicon one. It must be the custom silicon one. Now, Mount Evans, I believe, was famously built specifically for Facebook. However, I do believe after that it was also then sold on the open market. Mount Morgan is either the iterative version of that or a mass market version. And because this is a division of Intel that doesn't say a lot, just like Altera didn't say a lot when it was part of Intel, that's going to change. So yeah, when CRN announces that Nex is going to be spun off, I consider that more networking, not edge. Nex is a bad term. Oh yeah, and Owen says here, Google Cloud Platform has a lot of Intel IPUs. So yeah, there's some business there. And if we look, NEX was making money. They never split it out between networking and edge, and there's also other things going on during hot chips. It's going to be a really busy week. I have booked flights. Dom is coming. We are going to see how much content we can make. So I'm going to be very tired and probably very hoarse. But yeah, even Power 666 says Mount Evans was used. He thinks they were used in some Arista switches. So yeah, good stuff. Then okay, so what are my key points here that I want to take from Intel? Actually, with that, let's go. Let's do mid-roll, just because we're about an hour in, I think, even though I blabbed for a bit at the beginning. So let's. Windows has a very weird window management system. It's a lot better than it used to be, let's be honest. And let's share screen. Yeah, so again, where's my mouse gone? So I'm going to take a minute here, talk about our sponsors and the ways you can support us. There is no sponsors, so you get to look at the store for a little bit. There are different ways you can support what we do. Still waiting for George to arrive, but you can either subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Chips and Cheese YouTube, or our respective websites, or you can buy merchandise. And anything you buy here, we get to spend on feeding George at events. Also, it just so happens that the system that I'm actually streaming this on put up their prices 77% this month. So either I need to look for a new stream distribution platform, or we just stay here and eat the cost. But it's okay. It's cool. I know you guys are cool. So yeah, easiest way to subscribe, hit notification bell. If you're more a fan of the written content, go see our written websites. I focus mostly on the industry. George does the hardcore microarchitecture testing. Actually, just to show some of the articles that we've been doing recently. I recently did this article on the Electron E1 CPU, a CPU that promises 100 times the efficiency of ARM. There's also a video. The video actually is perhaps going to be the biggest video of the year, and it's insane why. Just over a day, it's got over 100,000 views. So thank you all for watching. Glad to know that you liked it, or if at least you disagreed with it, you had some good conversation. So many comments. George and the team over at Chips and Cheese, he teased this recently. They did a deep dive into Huawei's ARM architecture. I'll switch this tab. So this is the, I'll dump this link in the chat as well, so everybody can go to chipsandcheese.com. And the latest is Huawei's Kunpeng ARM-based architecture. And you're thinking, wait, what? They got a Huawei chip in the US? Huh? They've done a fun thing here. This is a network card. We're speaking about Mount Evans, the IPU. This is a networking infrastructure card that they were able to SSH into. And as a result, they tested the architecture of the networking card, which sounds insane. But honestly, you either wait around for a CPU to fall into your lap, or you manage to get access to a networking card. So yeah, they were able to fully go into the architecture design. If George was here, he would speak a bit through that. If you want to look at L3, talk about the multi-threading modes, the cache latencies, the performance. I mean, so some of this is academic, right? It's a core none of us will ever touch in our lives, but it's something coming out of China, and it's Huawei. So, and as Owen says, as part of Chips and Teas team, the actual NIC stuff on this will still be a work in progress, right? So that's cool. Yeah. So, yeah, please do support us. We are looking at more T-shirt designs as well. I always wonder if there's too many T-shirts out there, but you tell us on that. Yeah, everything you buy helps me feed George at our next tech event. My day job is a consultant of the industry. So if you are an investor of a fund or you're working for a company in the industry and you want some analysis or advice, please do reach out. I had a really interesting call today from a company I'm not going to tell you about because the calls are confidential. But somebody just signed up to my Substack and say, let's have a chat about what I do and what do you think? And I love those chats. I love finding out about different people in the industry. So, or whatever your interest is, whether it's chiplets, whether it's AI, whether it's microarchitecture, whether it's Foundry. It's all pretty cool. Okay, now let's go into, I have 12 topics here to cover, some of which we've gone briefly over. So, yeah, let's talk about 18A, Intel's 18A. Get a bit dry. Drink. 18A is Intel's next generation process node. It's the one that Pat said he bet the company on. We know that there's 18A and 18AP, and then future 18A PT for base dies. And the expectation was 18A was going to be the one that brings customers to the table as an external foundry node. And we know that there are plenty of companies working with Intel on 18A, chips on 18A or 18AP. Ever since the foundry event earlier in the year, as I've said on Poutine before, there's like everybody kind of pushed out their expectations of external partner silicon about 9 months because it's more an 18AP than an 18A statement, but it's part of the same family, just like TSMC4 and TSMC3. But 18A isn't going to wait around, right? They're going full Intel products first, and Intel made two big, essentially, well, they made several points here, right? 18A is going to be a super long-term node. It's only going to hit peak volume at the end of the decade into next. So there's that, which means it's going to ramp up through the rest of the decade. It will be profitable on Intel products alone. So Intel have committed 3 generations of product to 18A. We've got Clearwater Forest, Diamond Rapids, and Panther Lake. right? They're all going to be on 18A. There will be more than that, obviously, over time. But what they're saying is those are the 3 generations that are going to be on 18A. And obviously, whatever the Clearwater Forest successor is going to be. So I believe that will be that. Or maybe that's not 18A. Either way, they're saying that if Intel Products is the only customer of 18A, 18A will be profitable. That's fine. Customers won't be in the first wave of 18A. And we kind of knew about that, right? We kind of, from the Foundry event, and they may be more of an 18AP. So when I say waves of 18A, I don't mean 18A, then 18AP, then 18APP, then 18APPP. P stands for, no, it doesn't stand for plus. P, it stands for performance. The point is that with any of these, it's Intel's in the unique position where they have a lead customer every time. It's called Intel Products. But just like TSMC, right, with TSMC N2, the lead partner for N2 is AMD. It's not Apple. Apple's going to come in a future wave, right? A future wave of N2 is going to be Apple. Just in the same way with N3, it was Apple first, and other people came along. So with 18A and 18AP and that whole family, Lip-Bu's argument is once customers see it working, and with their own proof of concepts they're already designing with us, we expect them to commit in future waves. So there's that. So yeah, even if anything else happens, what Lip-Bu is saying is 18A will be a profitable node just on Intel products. Point 1. Point 2, there is a future in which Intel no longer builds on the leading edge product node. Lip-Bu has said that part of his talk of discipline and capital efficiency is going to be that 14A will only build out if they have customers who want it. Customers is a broad term here. They mean both internal customers and external customers. The difference here is that 14A brings a lot to the table for Intel. Second generation Power Via, whatever they're calling it, high NA EUV as an option on top of that. Those machines cost a lot. Lip-Bu has said that 14A is not profitable on Intel products alone. If Intel suddenly makes a massively amazing 18A product, consumer product, enterprise products, and they sell billions, then suddenly demand's going to go like that. And yes, 14A will then be supported by Intel products only. But right now, he's saying that they need customer commitments. Just like back in Pat's days when they said they had $1 billion prepayment with a customer that most people believe was Amazon at this point, that if customers are willing to prepay, Lip-Bu will build out the infrastructure, and that will support both product, internal Intel product, and external customers. But if there's not, there is the potential on the table for him to turn around and say, no, we are not deploying 14A in volume. Now, 14A is already in development in the fab, right? They have a development line in Oregon for 14A because they have the higher name machine there. They've done 10,000 wafers on it, or however it is now. So they may not move it out of the R&D fab into a high volume fab. They could still come out with 14A products, but that might mean that as 14A as a family, because of the importance of 18A, they'd much rather improve 18A. Things like double patterning and triple patterning and high NA and the cost of high NA come into it a little bit. But the idea is that eventually there will be enough business on 18A and enough clients, external clients, happy on 18A that 14A will come about. Now, the other point of this is, well, what happens to Intel products if 14A doesn't get built out? What does that mean for next generation CPU, GPU, whatever's after Nova Lake, that sort of thing? And the answer right now is nobody knows, because the obvious, well, The obvious response is, well, then they have to go external. Hi, TSMC. Hi, the only leading edge foundry in the world now. And for a lot of people, that's the nail in the coffin for both foundry and product. But now it's part of me has just thought that, is this Tan trying to do a shakedown of the business? No, and honestly, I don't think it is. He's just saying, I don't want to spend 20 billion building out 14A if it's not going to get me at least 20 billion back. And you know, Knight asks, wasn't 14A high EUV only? No, they did say there was going to be a low NA option, a regular EUV option. The thing is, that requires more layers, more masks, more steps. So your yield goes down and your throughput goes down. But there is an argument for, in order to do high volume, high NA, you need a dozen machines. Intel right now has 2. And they cost 400 million a pop. So if you're going to do high volume, high NA EUV, Intel needs to spend another 4 billion on machines and put them in the right locations. That would also mean if they're going to move high volume manufacturing out of Oregon to somewhere else, like in Ohio, they would have to move the machine over, and that's a whole thing, and that takes, you know, several years. So now, don't get all of it. During all of this, Intel is still investing in R&D. They're still investing in technology development. They're still investing in 14A as a process. Still investing in 10A, 7A, 5A, 2A, all the way down. You know, they have pathfinding that goes out 5, 7, 10 years. That's not stopping, because they still have to find ways to make not only 18A cost effective, but 14A worth deploying. And this is the key. I think this is the key point from all of this that people are so concerned about, right? The fact that the suggestion that 14A won't be built has got people worried. And to be honest, if I look at Intel stock price today, can I share this? Share screen. This is the Yahoo Finance. Right before earnings yesterday, they were at $23. They're now at 20. Or at start of opening, they were at 20.50, and now they're at 20.49. You know, in 5 days, they've gone down 10%. It sounds like even mentioning that 14A would be off the table has been a net negative to the announcements. So, so with that, that's point 2. We've got 12 to go. We've got 12 in total. Point 3. Coral Rapids. Hey, we have a name for the next generation product. Woo! But it's a long way off. So Coral Rapids is after Diamond Rapids. So Granite Rapids, GNR. Diamond Rapids, DMR. Coral Rapids, CLR. CRR. What 3-letter acronym for Coral Rapids do you want to use? Comments down below. Yeah, so that it's still 2 full generations ahead of today's roadmap and successor to Diamond. Whether it's P only, E only, or P and E, or again, this is part of the LitBoo. We're going to consolidate the Xeon, or we're going to simplify the Xeon roadmap. This would be, I guess, Xeon 8. And 8's a lucky number in China. So, you know, it's, well, we're in here. At first glance, that timeline sounds like a very confidence in Intel's data center continuity, but the long horizon also reveals how Intel is approaching its roadmap. with caution, long lead times, and room for iteration, it does sound like it's a long cadence. So, yeah, Brian has the right idea. Xeon 888. And this is where I say, because in my ADHD rattled mind, 118 got your number. The Brits will understand what that is. Sorry, Dom in the background's just done a spit take on his monitor and is now choking on his dinner. Fantastic. You gave the middle finger to the audience, Dom. Fantastic. Love that. So, yeah. Coral Rapids. Intel wants... the argument here is that Intel could have announced it to show long-term stability. I honestly think it was Litbu making a tiny mistake in the analyst Q&A. It was the very last question of the analyst Q&A. It was and yeah, he didn't even need to say it, but he did, so we know. Yeah, and obviously, if that's definitely going to be on 14A or better, so that might not even happen if 14A is taken off the table. So Nova Lake, so that's number 3. Number 4, Nova Lake. Intel has confirmed that Nova Lake won't arrive until the end of 26. I guess we kind of already knew this. The thing is, Panther is coming to mobile first. I think we've all known that. Excuse me, at this point. The question is, will any of Panther ever come to desktop, or is that just going to be Nova Lake? And if Nova Lake is definitely just the desktop part, I mean, is the next desktop part is just Nova Lake, that's a long time between, was it Core 9 285K and Core 9 385K, right? I don't know what Dash is constantly says my name in the chat. Let's keep an eye on that. Yeah. But Panther Lake is going to carry the load on mobile. But if you're a desktop user, you got to think in this time frame, we're going to see Zen 6 likely come out to desktop as well. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That's point 4. Go on to point 5. Germany is no longer on the map. So yeah, after years of negotiation, speculation, and what can be described as political jockeying, German fab is dead. The language in the earnings was unambiguous. Not go ahead with the project. So this is arguably the most high-profile cancellation in the CHIPS Act. I mentioned it was the site of the Silicon Roadmap. Okay, I may have misspoke by saying they've taken Germany off the map. They've taken Germany off their fab map. Guys, come on. There's subsidies and geopolitical overtones on this. But basically, the feeling was the investment would pay off, and Litbu was thinking that Intel was overextended. I think part of this comes down to maybe Litbu's looked at the potential customer sheet and said, where are these people going to buy chips? Yeah, as Manuel says, also they would put tariffs on the chips if they were built in Germany. So there is that as well. Okay, that's number 5. Let's go to number 6. And I've lost my place. Process betting isn't optional. I've kind of already covered that. That's the 14A again. What is it? I was really tired when I wrote this, because Intel always used to be the company that it would go to the next node because its products division would keep it afloat. Perhaps an argument here is because Intel is keeping older process nodes alive for Foundry customers, products has to do more in an environment where products is doing less, or is doing less business than it needs to keep the future progress of process node development alive. As a result, this reliance on external customers means that Intel just can't bet the company on the next process anymore, which has always been the thing with leading edge semiconductor companies. Are we going to go down to, well, Rapidus brings it up to 4 leading edge. Are we going to go back down to 3 just as soon as Rapidus comes into the picture? Yeah, Intel used to solve all of this through vertical integration. Intel products anchor the process ramps. But yeah, it's now Intel's going to have a bigger sales team in order to do it. So, okay, that was number 6. Let's go for number 7. Number 7 is this commentary about Lip-Bu and his criticisms of Pat. Normally, CEO transitions don't see the new one criticizing the old. And I'll be honest, he didn't criticize Pat directly, but he was quite adamant that he's changing Pat's approach to saving Intel. And those of you, again, following the story will know that Lip-Bu actually left the Intel board in August before Pat was fired in December. So there is that. So it's clear he didn't agree with how Pat was necessarily running things. I'm not saying that's why he left the board. But his argument here is, investments are made too early, capital expenditure got ahead of demand, and the manufacturing footprint has become bloated and fragmented. He said all this in his note. So yeah, it's not. I guess the criticisms aren't necessarily what's the unexpected nature; it's the tone. He said he came out and said, this is excessive, right? And it is refactoring the ship in his view. One could argue Pat was doing a lot to bring down operational expenditure, right? Thing is, Lip-Bu's come in and kind of put that into overdrive. We're talking cutting headcount, cutting certain parts of the business, selling more of it. So there's all that, right? One could argue that this also makes Intel a bit more agile when it comes to future products and product releases. So we'll see about that. So that's number 7. Let's go on to number 8. Number 8 is about hyperthreading. It's back on the menu, boys. Lip-Bu he came out and said past designs have got it wrong. Lunar Lake got it wrong, essentially. Not talking about the cost structure or the onboard memory or the advanced packaging that's incredibly expensive, but it didn't have enough hyperthreads. Specifically, actually, he speaks about hyperthreads in terms of data center. So adjust a little on that. But Intel were the company that mass marketed hyperthreading to the masses. So for them to come out of it seemed a bit weird to him. So yeah, in terms of enterprise and HPC, I think the thing is, if we go to enterprise and HPC, one of the reasons why all the ARM chips in the cloud service providers are single threaded is because one vCPU equals one thread, and it's a consistent performance. The argument for hyperthreading, not only with security, but also inconsistent performance. So he's bringing that back just simply because high throughput when it comes to enterprise and HPC, it's for a lot of the companies that have shunned HPC or not gone after the HPC market as much. It sounds like Lip-Bu really sees that as a fundamental part of the business. That might be a generational thing, right? I don't know. I love the HPC crowd. I spend a lot of time inside the HPC crowd, and they fully admit they're not the key customer when it comes to the latest workloads. And as a result, they're getting the short stick with a lot of things, and they're having to adapt. I filmed a video recently, which is still in the edit suite, about something called the Azaki scheme, which is a way to leverage 8-bit integer units to do FP64 workloads, or Nvidia's argument is, well, you get all the compute and the AI comes for free. So yeah, the fact that he's refocusing on HPC does seem a little, big props, because the HPC people would love it. The problem is that, they fully admit they're not first. They're not the first customer that comes to mind with a lot of this stuff. Part of this is Intel admitting a mistake, but it definitely does sound like more of a Litbu has seen this go wrong, therefore Litbu change course. So it's not an internal admission of mistake. It's the CEO basically, pointing a stick at the right people and going, do it this way. So, yeah, I don't know what point we're on now. Let's go to point 9. I think it is. Raptor Lake. So again, going back to the in the Intel 7 architecture, or the Intel 7 process, Intel, back when we had chip demand was high and in short supply, TSMC couldn't build enough. Intel can't build enough 7-nanometer chips. And I know that's such a weird thing to say, given how often we talk about Intel 4, Intel 3, in an upcoming 18A. It's really weird to me that Intel's it's as if Intel's got one machine working on Intel 7 and it's maxed out. So is that a thing? I don't know. Where is Gaudi? I've kind of glossed over that already. Yeah, the AI and the employees. One thing I will say is, I think we covered it in a previous Poutine, but part of the employee moving down 75,000 is, you may have seen the announcement that Intel is going to outsource most of its marketing to Accenture for a couple of years. So, part of the 75,000 may be we're not losing the capability, we're just going to be outsourcing it and paying somebody else to do it. So there's all of that to go in. I did miss Gregory's $10 super chat. Thanks, very much appreciated. Don't forget Devil's Canyon. You're going to ask me to bring it out now, aren't you? Devil's Canyon, 4790K is here somewhere. 4790. $1290p. Where did it go? I definitely have it, or it's in the esoteric chips drawer, where all my Xeon pies are. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there's a Haswell E5 V3 in here. Yeah, it's in here somewhere. Devil's Canyon, eh? Yeah, Raptor is good and cheap to make. It says monolithic. It's on their own process node. A lot of other oddball Intel products using Intel 7. And also, if we consider that 7 is realistically the super iteration of 14, that means it's hyper optimized, hyper cost optimized. Yeah, just super cheap to make. Schmide asks, is software-defined silicon finally dead? Litbu would argue no, because we're designing the silicon for software. If you know about, reconfigurable silicon, no, FPGAs are still massive. It's, as long as there's a market for it, somebody will build something, as long as it's at the right cost, realistically. To So no, not really. I don't think so. Let's see here. Why do you keep saying my name, Dash? I'm not sure why you are. Do I think semiconductor business is at the peak of the cycle? ASML down, Intel down, and others down. So ASML cycles are sometimes hard to determine because it all depends on build out and demand. And you remember I said that 90% of fab machines are still in operation that have ever been built. That's a number I picked up from some analyst somewhere. So don't quote me on that, quote him, go find it. So with ASML, it's all about their order book and what they can deliver, because they can deliver, right? Their order book fluctuates wildly month to month. I mean, I have, let's see if I have it quickly to hand. Yeah, let's share this window. Hopefully you guys can see this. So this is a graph I've put together. So this shows how many EUV machines they've sold versus the average price per quarter. This is based on extrapolating numbers out a bit. I haven't got the latest quarter in here because I haven't gone over ASML's numbers. But the average price of an ASL machine is going up. Q1 is seasonally low, so the numbers in terms of total units has gone down. That's revenue and gross margins. So again, but here's bookings, and let me turn off the live comments, and sorry, Manuel, just so everybody can see. So this is bookings. So this is how much you have on your order book of people either have paid, willing, or have committed to pay. And you see during 21 to 22, during the chip shortage, lots of machines were being sold. However, recently it's fluctuated a lot. We've got, you have one high quarter, one low quarter, one high quarter, one low quarter, one high quarter, one low quarter. And you have to answer, is that oscillation, or is that the reality of the situation? If we go to logic versus memory on this, you'll see that the end use of machines usually hovers around 60 to 70% logic versus memory, but in like the past year or so, it is moving more towards logic and more towards memory. And I think part of that is HBM demand as well. We use lithography machines for HBM, so there is that. And if we look at the region, this is such a weird graph to analyze, right? And the way this works is for each quarter, the revenue percentage of where that revenue comes from is listed. So China recently used to be 50%, but Taiwan, during that period of high book value, that Taiwan was a 50% business of ASML. In Q1 this year, it was only 16%. Most of it was South Korea. Memory, South Korea. South Korea is big on memory, so that makes sense. Europe hasn't been part of this equation for almost a year at this point, but sometimes they're like 20%. USA fluctuates. There were 32% in one quarter, but then there were 3% in this quarter, right? Japan's biggest is 10%. That's probably when Rapid has bought the EV machine, right? Rest of Asia is every so often. That might be when Singapore needs a couple of things. So this isn't like Nvidia's graph where it's source of sale. This is where the stuff gets shipped to. and it's so when you talk about a low point for ASML, it's hard to determine where the low point is, because it might just be that we're experiencing a pivot to memory, right? And that pivot to memory is South Korea. Or the bookings may just be leveling out after a run in the pandemic, and we're actually going to move back to more sort of, 3 billion euros a quarter revenue in this instance. And gross margins have been consistent. In actual fact, there's a tick up. So there's understanding. Bride asks, does EMEA include Israel as well? In this instance, I believe so. If not, it's under rest of Asia, but rest of Asia is quite small, so yeah. Alex is saying, oh, okay, software defined silicon was the unlock accelerator on Xeons. I believe it technically does still exist, but it's both customer and OEM specific. So Intel works with an OEM like Dell to ensure that Dell has the firmware to support it. And then Dell has, and they agree that there's a specific client in mind. And then Dell only ships that BIOS, that firmware, that deployment to that customer. And that's a very specific end-to-end deployment. Usually with customers that have long established payment plans with Intel, right? So that might be an Oracle or something. So, no, good. Thank you for cleaning that up. I wasn't clear, wasn't 100% fact. Wildcat asks, with all of this, what's your confidence in percentage for an Intel comeback? Now, I think I approached this a few Poutines ago. And one of the questions I also ask to investors, and they ask of me, is if you look 5 or 10 years down the line, what percentage? There's two questions. How likely is Intel will look the same, or how much of Intel will look similar? Intel will still be doing 18A in product. If both of those parts can get into the black and start generating 20% gross margins, that's great. The thing here is, do you assume the product team are going to execute on performance, or do you assume that the Foundry team is going to execute on manufacturing, and then it's the other side that has to do the work? In reality, of course, it's both. But no, Intel comeback means market leadership. Pat's goal of being equal or above TSMC, but also having the market leading product, especially in Xeon, because don't forget, back in the day, Intel wanted its enterprise to be more than 50% of the business. And I think they may have managed it for 1 quarter, technically. The thing is, so some people consider this as Intel's coming back from Intel can't just reset; it has to realign, then reset, and that's more work than starting fresh. Intel always has a strong customer base. They're still more than 50% service share in enterprise, right? It's just that their average selling price is lower, so their unit share is still high, but their revenue share is lower than it needs to be. Part of that is understanding the market, and Intel used to do a really good job of understanding the market. Wildcat, you're going to have to tell me which quote that was. I'm always on the lookout for good quotes. But yeah, it's, I think there's a 60 to 70% chance that Intel will look the structure will be fairly similar to what it is today going forward. Okay, they may release a few of its investments or a few of its divisions, and they may move into certain areas. But in terms of having a product side, in terms of having a foundry side, like they have done for the last 30 years, I more than not expect that to be the same. In fact, I'm pretty confident that will stay the same. I don't expect any spin out of Foundry or product, because it doesn't make sense because of how, and unless somebody's willing to turn around and say, hey, I'm willing to accept $50 billion of potential lost revenue to go buy Foundry, they go and then buy Foundry, accept 10 years of losses, perhaps up to 50. I'm just extrapolating here because when Mubadala became the major owner of Global Foundries, they went through what, 5 years of losing money before they decided to not do EUV, and now they're actually making money again. Somebody would have to do that, and I don't think anybody's willing to. But I think that's because Intel, as you know, with 18A, is going to stand on its own 2 feet. Comeback leadership, I would love it, because we need competition. So, oh yeah, sorry, let's put back in the chat overlay. Yeah, so yeah, it's I don't see Intel going anywhere anytime soon, because there's still so much road left to run before they have to be super critical. But also, you know, they didn't have a super terrible quarter this year. Revenue was on par with previous quarters. They made more money in certain areas. They made more margin in certain areas. You have to believe that what Litbu's doing regarding operational efficiency is the right method. And there is some truth to Litbu saying that perhaps Pat overextended capital expenditure. The worry is that Litbu might take it the other way, but maybe that's a good thing for Intel. I'm not an investor, right? I have no financial positions. Would I? Yeah. I'm way too analytical to even invest. They say people who are really dive deep into the numbers and are super unsure or anxious shouldn't be investors. That's why I'm not an investor. Schmide asks, how much is available tooling holding back customers at the fab? That's probably not a limitation. It's probably what's holding customers back. Part of it here is confidence. Confidence in Intel's ability to deliver, confidence in the PDK, confidence of volume and of packaging. And everybody is speaking to Intel. It would be silly not to. How many of those people are actually doing custom chips? Well, part of that is being funded by the government. Don't forget, Intel also has to enable things like PCIe and USB, and DDR3, DDR4, DDR5, all these memory controllers as part of its IP portfolio. So it has to work with Cadence, Synopsys, Siemens, and others to ensure that customers of that software will have silicon-proven IP that they can put in their design and decide to buy, license, whatever. So Intel's putting a lot of money into shoring up the IP ecosystem as well, right? That means paying companies like Synopsys and Cadence to go design a PCIe 6, a PCIe 5, a PCIe 4 even controller on 18A. And then as they do test vehicles through the fab, making sure that it works, making sure that simulation aligns with the PDK. And that's one of the reasons why the push out from 18A to 18AP, that was, we all saw back in the Foundry event earlier in the year, kind of, moving things 9 months forward, gives more time for that IP to be finalized, to be more accurate, making sure the simulations work. And I've heard a mixed bag from engineers at Cadence and Synopsys and others about their IP development. But it's a timing thing, right? So, who do you think could be 14A's first big customer? Intel products. That's a cheap answer, I know. Realistically, for a leading edge product node, you need somebody who's going to be building at least one chiplet of their ASIC there. A CPU chiplet, a GPU chiplet, an AI chiplet, and probably not an IO chiplet, because IO on 18A probably doesn't make, on 14A doesn't make too much sense. But it doesn't have to be big. It can be 40 square mil. It could be a an Amazon Graviton V5 compute chiplet, right? The I/O is done at TSMC. The PCIe chiplet is done somewhere else, but the compute chiplet, or one of the compute chiplets, one of the Nitro accelerator, realistically, it might be one of the chip design companies, a Broadcom, a Marvell, a MediaTek. Thing is, those companies already have extensive collaboration with TSMC. What LitBoo has to do is get the EDA companies to work with the chip design companies and then draw that line for them. And that's why the government has this 18A development program, of which Nvidia is a part of. So Nvidia is building chips on 18A. Thing is, they're development chips that the government paid them to build. So the question is, will Nvidia ever go build anything on 18A in the future? Well, it depends if they get any confidence out of the program paid for by the government. It's that sort of thing. So Metabulation asks, do memory density trends reveal anything about memory type popularity? Any comments on recent SRAM capacity per square millimeter progress? So people say that SRAM isn't scaling. We are seeing it still scale. I mean, all the numbers from the 18A back at ISSCC earlier this year show that there's still growth to be made. The thing is, I've actually done a video. We've recorded a video that needs to be edited about a new, well, not a new type of SRAM, but a new way to create SRAM. That's done at IMEC using indium gallium zinc oxide, IGZO, the stuff that they use in panels. The idea being that SRAM, how you design SRAM for the most cases, one transistor, one capacitor, one transistor, one capacitor, one transistor, one capacitor. So you get your 1T, 1C. The T scales, the C doesn't. So one way to change that is to change how your cell operates. And the way IMEC has come up with is a system that does 2 transistor, with 1 transistor being IGZO based. And as a result, they scale. Isn't that DRAM? Am I getting confused? Isn't that? I'm gonna have to look at my script. This is what I get for working late. Did I write it in here? IMEC IGZO. Yeah, okay, I'm wrong. That's DRAM. Sorry, yeah. Reset, because I did a video on this about a MediaTek phone. Okay. SRAM is 6 transistor, yes. However, MediaTek on a phone, the phone before this, implemented a 12 transistor L1 cache. And the reason is it was better. It was better in power and performance, but you lost in density. The main thing that changes SRAM scaling in the future is CFETs. So this is complementary FETs where you put N on P or P on N. It's part of the research for a while now. It's coming after gate all around and fork sheet transistors. CFETs overnight will double the density of SRAM, because you're now being able to put essentially effectively 2 transistors or the parts of the transistor on top of each other. The problem is the minute we go to CFETs and double density, the cell size will be relaxed to make it easier to use the dual stacking method, right? I've also got another video about 3D monolithic FPGAs in the pipe that might be also relevant to this beyond the transistor design. So SRAM scaling is you either do it through physics or through architecture, and we're going to have a massive architectural jump at some point. And just to prove that I have been working on a video and I'm not the biggest numpty, that's the thumbnail. I like that thumbnail. I just need a proper title for it. The title might be "This Old Technology Solves a Big Problem." So we'll see. Yeah. No, Dom, you're okay. We've got like 12 videos in the pipe, and we've still got the AI hardware show as well coming through. I've got half an hour before a hard stop. So if there's any last minute questions about Intel, Dom did say we had some special topics at the end of the show. I've lost my tab again. Let's go there. Oh God, do I want to show this? You're evil. Not that one. Lenovo announces a $3,700 laptop. It's the rollable one with only one M.1 2232 or 2230 or 2242 NVMe drive for $3,700. Yes, try and make me mad, aren't you? By saying that. Actually, let's go into this. Trump wanted to break up Nvidia. Jensen a few weeks ago did a tour of Washington where he was here, there, and everywhere, basically trying to show the administration. And he's actually being admonished in some comments for praising the administration, yet realistically, he's playing the game. Yeah. Imagine breaking up Nvidia. Into what? Into what? So yeah. Don't Red Flames asks what happened to rentable units. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. And did you have a final question about ARC Wildcat, or are you just saying ARC for the hell of it? To be honest, I think the whole rentable units thing is a bit null and void. If it was a thing and it's not coming, why care? If it's an interesting technology, somebody will pick it up. Yeah. So only the 8-core SKUs will have big cache. Any insight to why? So part of this is how cache hierarchy works. One of the biggest videos on the channel I ever did was talking about IBM, the Z16 chips, Telum chip, with its virtual L3 cache. It was able to use the L2 of another core as an L3. And I still want to see that on consumer CPUs, right? Because then we can actually have, when we have fewer threads, we can drive higher cache per thread when there's not a lot of work. So yeah. Blink twice if Arc Celestial is coming. I said Arc isn't dead. Arc's coming, dude. Just don't ask me when, because I have no clue. What's the holdup with planar transistors? Nobody has solid adoption timelines. Oh, you mean 2D transistors? Planar transistors were what we started with back in the 70s. 2D is part of the difficulty is how do you build a mono layer of molybdenum disulfide on a chip without it being multiple layers and consistently? And also, how do you connect it to the rest of the metal stack? There was a paper a while ago from TSMC about non-contacting bismuth being an option. Unfortunately, there was a graph in that paper that extrapolated a line down to 1 nanometer. And and people said, this is how we get 1 nanometer transistors. And I was like, no, you idiots, there's no data point down there. And if you read the text, there's no data point about it. So, yeah. Let's see. Manuel says, today there was a report of gas turbines being spotted at an OpenAI data center. Are you referring to the 34 megawatt gas turbine? I think I saw that on semi-analysis. If you think that's the first time being spotted, I'm sorry to tell you, that's been going on for ages. Most of the world's AI data centers are, if they're not hooked up to the grid, are being powered by diesel. One thing not to ask Jensen is about the fuel consumption of AI. So there's that. Get your last minute questions in. Again, as I said at the start of the show, if you've got questions for Intel C-suite, do let me know. I'm still trying to angle a piece with them. So semi-analysis actually has some good breakdowns of the power delivery at data center sites. If you want the big detail, that costs what, 25 grand a quarter or whatever for their report. However, some of their articles are showing, just exactly where the batteries are needed in Colossus and where the power distribution networks need to be and what the limitations are long term. I still have pretty much every slide from Dylan's presentation at DAC. I started writing that script. I think I got about 1,500 words in. That I think I still got another 8,000 words to do if I want to complete that, and I should do it soon in order to get that off the plate. The problem is finding time to do it and then finding time to edit it. So I may be on the lookout for a second video editor just to get things moving along. So yeah, Patriot asks, do you think Panther Lake can deliver with 18A from what you're hearing? I'm hearing that the node itself is good when it works. On the architecture, we'll have to find out. But realistically, we're still so far out from me knowing anything. And even if I did know anything, I couldn't tell you. So the way you did interviews during CES was kind of YAG AF. Am I too old? Are you talking about yttrium silver lasers, YAG? Or is that just the chemist in me? I don't know. Yeah, well, unless anybody's got anything else. Yeah, if I search for YAG AF, it's yttrium silver lasers. So I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, so let's wrap it up there. I'm gonna use the bathroom before my meeting in 20 minutes. Yeah, that's been a lot of Intel today. A lot of things that Litbu has said that has raised, as the title of the video says, more. With every answer there just comes more questions and more answers. I do wonder what the questions would turn into if the analyst Q&A was more than the 30 to 40 minutes they end up being. So I bet you so many analysts have a lot of questions about where the headwinds, where the tailwinds. I mean, no mention was made out of China because of the both AMD and Nvidia are looking for export licenses for some of their chips into China, whether Litbu is even going after that market. I mean, realistically, I think people want to understand what his corporate philosophy is beyond just essentially fiscal responsibility and effectiveness. I am starting to see, it's really been going on for a while now, but it's picked up recently, a lot of people on LinkedIn who are leaving Intel saying what a good time they've had at Intel. never really a bad comment to say online about people working at Intel from the people who are leaving. It would be interesting to hear from anyone if they are recently joining Intel, why and what for, and what's going on there. So, yeah, more is going to be, I say more. It's financial season, right? We're going to have AMD financials, ARM financials. We've had ASMLs. There's going to be a few others coming down the pipe, and we'll get to those. Again, like we said last week, it's still roughly a quiet period in terms of product and in terms of events. Hot Chips at the end of August is the big one. There is technically Flash Memory Summit has renamed, I think, to the Future of Memory and Storage. Guys, come on. We want to also include AI and stuff. No, Flash Memory Summit. Future of Memory and Storage, indeed. That's technically, I think, next week or the week after. I won't be going, but I did have a company reach out. I'll say, hey, are you going? But if you're going, enjoy. And yeah, that's all, folks. Wait a second, where's...
If you like this content, there are multiple ways to support the channel. You can like and subscribe this video, and many thanks for doing so. There's also Patreon, which gives you access to our Discord. There's a merchandise store and a newsletter, links in the description. For all of you who do contribute, thank you. You are keeping me well fed.